I now give the floor to Ms. Bintou Keita.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, thank you for giving me this new opportunity to speak to you in order to present the Secretary General's report on MONUSCO's activities and to give you an overview of the current situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Today, I would like to focus my statement on the issues that I raised before the Council in March. These challenges and opportunities on the path that we need to take together, along with the government and the Congolese population, in order to continue democracy building in the country, to strengthen institutions, and to make steadfast progress towards stabilization of the eastern provinces, as well as the protection of civilians. The primary challenge, and undoubtedly the most significant challenge, is that of security and protection of civilians in the east of the country. The government has declared a state of siege in the North Kivu and Ituri provinces. Since then, the mission has stepped up its efforts to support the armed forces, the police forces, and the judicial authorities in order to restore the presence and authority of the state on each of these territories. The forces' capability to gather intelligence has been increased. Training is now provided to the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the FARDC, on military tactics and on respect for the principles of human rights and humanitarian law. The state of siege has led to a strengthening of the partnership between MONUSCO and the FARDC. This has been seen through progress in terms of planning and carrying out operations. To this end, all rapid reaction units should be deployed by the end of October to strengthen our capability to protect civilians during joint operations against armed groups. This is in line with the human rights due diligence policy. Nonetheless, much remains to be done, including to ensure that human rights of the population are systematically respected as part of the combat against the armed groups. On the 5th of July, an order on disarmament, demobilization, community recovery and stabilization was published, and subsequently a national coordinator was appointed. This represents a significant opportunity. There's a close link between the state of siege and the PDDRC as the disarmament program. They are complementary approaches to ensure armed groups are disbanded once and for all. I assured the President and the Prime Minister that the United Nations are completely available for the government to make progress in this process, including through the working group on the DDRCS between the government and MONUSCO. The mission has also stepped up its political commitment and engagement with those players who come from conflict areas, the idea being to accompany for them to accompany the implementation of the state of siege and to maintain constructive dialogue with the military governors. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, joint military operations against the ADF led to the last bastions of the group being disbanded. However, human rights violations perpetrated by state and non-state actors, in particular in the provinces of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu, are still very worrisome. Between June and August, 367 people were victims of arbitrary and extrajudiciary killings. 203 people, in particular women and children, were subject to sexual violence. In some regions, in particular in South Kivu, inter-community conflicts have been fueled by hate speech. I unequivocally condemn all hate speech, including recent statements encouraging cleansing of the High Plateau and justifying the murders of members of the Banyamulenge community. This populist, warmongering speech is a danger for the country's stability. It should be the subject of judicial sentencing that sets an example. The security situation and difficulties in accessing the east of the country continue to hamper humanitarian operations in a context where 1 out of every 3 people needs assistance. Food insecurity and cyclical epidemics are major concerns. Attacks against schools and hospitals have exacerbated humanitarian challenges in several regions in the east, in particular in Ituri. With more than 5 million displaced persons within the country, the DRC has the highest number of displaced persons in Africa. More than 26 million Congolese people are suffering from food insecurity, that is 29% of the population. I would urge Member States to increase their contributions to the 2021 Humanitarian Response Plan, which provides $1.98 billion to meet priority needs. To this day, unfortunately, the plan has only been financed to about a quarter of its financing. I would like to underscore MONUSCO and the UN country team's unwavering commitment to a zero-tolerance policy for sexual exploitation and abuse, and to provide comprehensive assistance to victims. Following recent allegations regarding the Ebola response, the DRC humanitarian team has strengthened its prevention systems and systems to combat sexual exploitation and abuse. To do so, $1.5 billion has been made available through the Common Humanitarian Fund. In English.
Each council members. The second challenge, which I have already addressed in my previous exchanges with you, concerns the process of democratic consolidation. While the formation of a new government in April of this year has provided an opportunity to advance on critical reforms, the focus of political actors and civil society alike is increasingly gravitating towards the 2023 election. There is still no consensus on the composition of the Independent National Electoral Commission, CENI, and several members of the opposition have organized rallies to contest the reform of the CENI, which has already been adopted by Parliament. In this context of political suspicions, I reiterate the need for an inclusive and peaceful electoral process founded on dialogue, trust, and transparency. To this end, MONUSCO continues to pursue its good offices with actors across the political spectrum, including to advocate for increased women's participation in this process.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, over and beyond these challenges, the implementation of the transition plan that was submitted to you as an annex to this report of the Secretary-General is a real opportunity for the Congolese government and the United Nations system. Operationalizing this transition plan, which is closely linked to the government's programme of action, will hinge to a large extent on the ability of the authorities to finance their priorities and to create necessary conditions for the mission's withdrawal. The government's draft law on finances for 2022, which focuses on security, education and healthcare, whilst providing budget lines to speed up economic growth, is a step in the right direction. The ongoing resolute support of partners in achieving this far-reaching programme is going to be extremely important. The mission withdrew from the province of Tanganyika in June 2000. It will withdraw in June 2022, rather, from the province of Tanganyika. Given this, the mission is working closely with agencies, funds and programs to ensure the necessary program assistance to build on the gains made in the province to date and to deal with the last pockets of insecurity. Clearly, this work will integrate the lessons learned from withdrawal from the Kasai.
Council members. Finally, I would like to highlight President Tshisekedi's ongoing effort to improve the political climate in the Great Lakes region through active diplomacy and the conclusion of bilateral agreements aimed at fostering increased economic cooperation. As I have previously noted, DRC's terms at the helm of the African Union offers an opportunity to not only foster peace and stability and development in Great Lake region, but also to consolidate the partnership between the continental body and the United Nations. Special Envoy Shia and I will continue to work hand in hand to support the realization of the Secretary General's strategy for the Great Lakes region in close consultation with the governments of the region. Mr. President, distinguished Council members, as we approach the renewal of MONUSCO's mandate, I believe that the joint transition plan constitutes a roadmap that can help guide the work of the mission in the coming years and prepare the ground for its orderly and responsible withdrawal. This must not obscure the fact that there is still much to do to silence the guns in the eastern provinces, foster the political dialogue necessary to pave the way for credible and transparent elections in 2023, and support the long-term strengthening of the country's institutions. I therefore call on the Council to continue providing the full backing to MONUSCO, including by endorsing the joint transition plan with adequate financial resources and playing an active role in its operationalization. Thank you for your attention.
I thank Ms. Keita for her briefing.